The 2026 wide receiver class is all projections. By the end of this video, you guys should know exactly who's good in this class, ultimately where the value of 2026 rookie picks are, and how it stands relative to this position. We are all going to need to take a shower after this video. We are getting sweaty as hell. We are a full calendar year away from any of this stuff mattering. But today we are diving into the FSC prospect model, running these underclassmen, running these 2026 prospects through it, seeing and prognosticating how this upcoming group will stack up. Couple things I need from all of you guys before we get into this. Number one, make sure to check out the running back video. I did it 2 weeks ago. Number two, I will not be explaining how the prospect model works. If you want a deeper explanation, go back to the 2025 versions of wide receivers to target and avoid. I broke them all down and they will be linked down in the description. Number three, if I forgot anybody, please let me know because I'm learning about this class just like you are. Make sure if you did, you want to bring together a 2026 wide receiver prospect, make sure they were productive. At least any guy with like 75 yards is going to score terribly in here and I don't feel bad about forgetting him. I'd also like to formally welcome the Devy Sickos to a civilized Dynasty fantasy football channel. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're new around here. And of course, pay attention because I don't know too many people who had Ashton Genty 101 going into last college football season. I don't know how many people had Travis Hunter playing wide receiver full time and, Isaiah Bond being overvalued and some of the stuff we hit on last year. So here's how we're going to run these guys through the model because there's a lot of projection going on here. I adjusted their model grades to account for the fact that they still have another college football season left to play. I'm grading all these guys on a curve. If they are a year 3 college player, ergo they are a redshirt sophomore or a junior, their score is divided by 90 over 100 to give them a little bit of a booster, knowing that they're still a young player and can still get better. If they are a year 4 college player, a true senior, or a redshirt junior, I divided it by 95 over 100 for prospects entering their 4th college season. Any prospects entering year 5 of their college career, year 6, they would actually have to directly improve their numbers to score higher because, they've already had plenty of time to do that. We want to reward younger players for being great at younger ages and balance the playing field because otherwise these seniors and super seniors are going to look a little bit more complete of prospects than the other guys because they're, 19, 20 years old. Generally, as Dynasty players, we want early declares. We want year 3 and year 4 college players. So we got to balance out the playing field from those older guys. So let's talk about what's not official in the 2026 wide receiver prospect model here. We don't have heights. We don't have weights. We're going to rely on the team websites. Even though they lie, they're going to tell you that a 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver is 6'4", 215. It's just going to happen. So we're going to take them at their word for the purposes of this exercise. 40 times. NFL Draft Buzz does a good job estimating them. A couple of NFL draft scouts do it as well, based on in-game speeds and that kind of thing. So we're going to run relative athletic scores, RAS numbers, which is an input in the model, speed scores and whatnot, as if these heights, weights, 40 times are actually true. Of course, they might be off a little bit by the time we get, calendar year from now, we actually know all this information. We might look back and be like, I can't believe that guy was listed with a 4.50. He ran a 4.75 at the combine or whatever. We're just going to take them at their word for the purposes of this exercise. And we are using projected draft capital from NFL mock draft database. We are missing a lot of the film score inputs. We don't have, grades from myself. We don't have Lance Zierlein grades. We don't have PFF big board grades. So a lot of the film stuff is going to change rapidly because we don't know where these guys are going to get drafted. And we really don't have any idea until the college football season is played. Even though we're missing a lot, we do have a lot of information on their analytics and on their traits. And of course, every year there's going to be a Brian Thomas Jr., a Matthew Golden type that emerges that we weren't expecting. But our goal is to get as clear of a view of the wide receiver class as we possibly can, because for those of you guys that are Devy players, you want to actually select these players in drafts. And for Dynasty, we want to know how many good wide receivers are in this class, how many studs do we got at the top, what kind of depth are we looking at, and so on. But let's get into the wide receiver class itself. In 2026, the wide receiver 1 is Jordyn Tyson of Arizona State. As of right now, you can see he has an 82.32% FSC grade. You can see also that I included his grade minus draft capital because I figured, I didn't do this in the running back video, but I figured in the wide receiver video especially, we should probably factor in, relatively speaking, what is their grade minus the draft capital input because it is projected. We really don't have any idea where these guys are going to actually go. So this can kind of give you an idea. How good was Corey Davis when you take away the fact that he was a top 6 pick? How good was Emeka Egbuka when you take away the fact that he was a top 25 pick? Same goes for Jerry Jeudy as a top 15 pick. So you can see, relatively speaking, he's a first-round caliber prospect. Tyson is entering year 4 of his college career at Arizona State. He posted 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns on a 35.8% target share in 2024. So very good production, very good market share numbers. Arizona State made the playoffs last year, almost actually beat Texas, and probably would have beaten Texas because Jordyn Tyson didn't actually play in that game. That was all Cam Scadaboo, and he had 445 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 3 combined games leading up to the Texas game. So there's a very good chance they probably win that game if Tyson is playing. He's 6'1", 195 pounds, so that's pretty good size. Low 4.5 speed, according to NFL Draft Buzz. That's pretty good speed. Performed well as a contested catch guy. Isn't overly dynamic in space by the looks of it, based on his numbers, but he clearly has the best analytics of any prospect in this class. Best comps to Corey Davis, Emeka Egbuka, and Jerry Jeudy. It appears Emeka Egbuka and him are almost identical in terms of profile. So Jordyn Tyson is the only wide receiver 1 upside in this class so far. We do not have a league winner prospect. I mean, it'd be far-fetched. We'd probably know exactly who that is if we did. Wide receiver 1 upside prospects, to give you guys an idea, were like Emeka Egbuka this year. Tedero McMillan at the very top of that tier. Travis Hunter was in this tier. It's a weak wide receiver class, relatively speaking, at the top right now. Hit rate-wise, we're talking a 40% chance at 15-plus point per game production. From a fantasy perspective, 60% chance that this asset in Jordyn Tyson would peak at wide receiver 1 in dynasty value on the market. Like I said, Tet and Hunter both ranked higher than this past year. Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, 2 years ago would have all ranked higher than this. So there is 4 wide receiver 2 upside prospects in the model to close out the top 5. So we have a relatively flat tier here, but all these guys kind of have their merits. Some of them higher ceiling guys, some of them higher floor guys. The wide receiver 2 right now in the model is Eric Singleton Jr., formerly of Georgia Tech, now of Auburn, and you guys are going to notice a lot of transfers on this list, as is the case with college football these days with NIL. Eric Singleton Jr., you can see some of his comps here. He is widely considered, I would say, a top 3 to 5 wide receiver in the class, based mainly on speed, explosiveness, what he can provide on film. At 5'11", 190 pounds, with projected 4.34 speed, he created a ton of big plays at Georgia Tech. We actually have seen a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket play 2 years in college, have a productive freshman and sophomore year, and then transfer to the SEC. The last player was Jahmyr Gibbs at the running back position who did that. He posted 700-plus yards in back-to-back seasons at Georgia Tech, 2.3 career yards per route run. Drops and contested catches were a bit of an issue for him, but he's a great yards-after-catch weapon. Hopefully, Auburn will use him out wide and not just throw him into the slot, because at Georgia Tech, he actually was an outside wide receiver. The comps range anywhere from like Marquise Brown, Jordan Addison, Chris Olave, and Xavier Worthy. One thing I will say about all these comps is that all of these guys were better through their first 2 college football seasons than what Eric Singleton has been through his first 2 college football seasons. So it is worth noting that he is not quite on the level of these guys as sophomores, but we'll have to wait and see what happens to him after his junior season. And obviously, it goes without saying that any of these players who are not seniors or super seniors could always go back to school. But Eric Singleton with a great season, you pluck a 1,200 yard, 10 touchdown season on his profile, he would end up being a first round pick, no doubt. Wide receiver 3 in the model is Carnell Tate of Ohio State. Another Ohio State Buckeye making the list here as a potential first rounder. 733 yards and 4 touchdowns doesn't sound overly impressive, but when you contextualize that he's sharing a field with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka this year. He's 6'3", 191 pounds. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school whose hallmark trait is, route running polish. He's got good size. I am sure he picked up a lot from his former teammate, Emeka Egbuka, about how to, move the chains. And I think that will be his role going forward in the Buckeyes offense. Of course, Jeremiah Smith is still going to probably out-target him, have more production than him. I might run Jeremiah Smith through the model just for fun to see how he would have stacked up even as a true freshman. But if Tate goes round 1, that'll mark the 5th Buckeye in 4 years to be selected in the first round. And we have seen a Buckeye selected in the first round at wide receiver in 3 straight seasons as well. And if Tate does it in year 4, we would see it again. And of course, we will see it when Jeremiah Smith comes out in 2027. So this is wide receiver U. Without Emeka Egbuka there, I do expect him to take some more targets on his plate because Jeremiah can't do everything. NFL Draft Buzz does actually have Tate as the wide receiver 1 in this class based purely on his tape and his profile. NFL Mock Draft Database has him going about in the range that Egbuka went last year, at the early 20s at 23 overall. You can see Brian Thomas Jr. selected with that same exact draft pick. Quentin Johnson, Laquad Treadwell, and Cortland Sutton as somewhat reasonable comps there for Carnell Tate. Wide receiver 4 in the model is Makai Lemon of USC. Stacks up really well analytically, and I think a lot of film guys really like Makai Lemon as well. 5'11", 190 pounds, 4.48 projected speed. I didn't really watch a whole lot of film on all these players. I'm mainly looking at their profiles on paper, but I did see a little bit of highlight tapes on Makai Lemon over my Twitter timeline. He looks a lot like Kyle Williams, I would say. Maybe even somebody that's going to give you something down the field. You could see some of the comps there, an Anthony Miller type, a Tyler Boyd type, even a Chris Godwin or a Juju, although those guys are a little bit bigger. Route running is definitely a strength. He led a crowded USC wide receiver core, and spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about 4 wide receivers in 2024 that were on the USC roster in this video. Zachariah Branch, the former #1 recruit, I'll talk about later. Jacoby Lane, I'll talk about in a second here as well. And Duce Robinson, who transferred away to FSU. All 4 of these guys had to compete for targets last year with kind of subpar quarterback play. And it was interesting that Makai Lemon led the team in receiving yards, led the team in yards per out run, led the team in receiving grade as well. So very, very interesting that Makai Lemon is the guy who comes out on top, knowing that Zachariah Branch was the, polished guy coming out of high school. Lemon posted 764 and 3 touchdowns this past year, 85.3 receiving grade, 3.03 yards per out run. Like I said, usually just scouting profile here, but he did kind of remind me of like Kyle Williams, who we just saw come out of Washington State, go to the Patriots in the 3rd round there. Wide receiver 5 in the model, closing out the wide receiver 2 upside tier, is Denzel Boston of Washington. Now, fun fact, Denzel Boston is actually the son of a 2001 first-team All-Pro receiver, David Boston, who famously had a 1,600-yard season in his 3rd year for the Arizona Cardinals and then got too jacked to play football and kind of fell off the face of the earth. So kind of a weird situation for David Boston's career, but he was a dog through his first 3 NFL seasons. And it's kind of like father like son in terms of physique, because Denzel Boston is rocked up, 6'4", 210 pounds, high 4.4 speed as well, despite not producing a ton at Washington in year 1 to 2 because of Odunze and McMillan and Jalen Polk there. You did see him actually have a nice season this year with 834 yards, 9 touchdowns in 2024. Projects probably more as like an early 2nd round caliber of wide receiver as of now, and some of the comps that you guys can see here factoring into that we don't know what his draft capital is going to be, and also that he's a physical, big play, kind of physical freak guy. You could see Jamison Williams, DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel as the biggest comps there. And again, even if we factor in the draft capital might not be accurate, we do see that he is, without draft capital, as good of a prospect as those guys are. Projecting forward here, again, we have 1 wide receiver 1 upside prospect in Jordyn Tyson, 4 wide receiver 2 upside prospects that we went through already, for a total of 5 guys. And to give you guys an idea relative to this year's class, through these first 2 tiers, we had 7. So it is definitely a worse wide receiver class than what we saw in 2025 as of now. But again, we have tons of time for guys to emerge. Let's get into the wide receiver 3 upside tier. And with day 2 capital, this is where like Jack Besh, Kyle Williams, and Jalen Knoll ended up landing in 2025. And with day 3 capital, this is where Jalen Royals and Elikayo Manor ended up landing in this year's class. To give you an idea of what caliber of prospect we're talking about here, Elijah Sarratt of Indiana, an interesting prospect who was actually on my radar last year. He transfers in from James Madison, went to St. Francis his freshman season. So he's been on 3 college football teams, but he is staying in Indiana this year after his junior year at 6'2", 210 pounds. He transferred last year and maintained really, really solid production. He had 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns as a true sophomore at James Madison, who of course throws the ball like crazy. And he comes in to Indiana. They don't throw the ball nearly as much as James Madison, but he had nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns that year, and he had 13 touchdowns as a true freshman at St. Francis as well. So he's just produced really wherever he's gone. Entering year 4 of his college career, if he slaps on a 1,300-yard, 10-touchdown type of season this year, I would say he'd be a very solid day 2 name. Probably won't have the film or the speed to go round 1, but maybe a 2nd or a 3rd round type of guy. Elikayo Manor, Jack Besh, that caliber of a prospect, I would say, is what we're in store for Elijah Sarratt, unless he just has like a monster season and surprises all of us, or a terrible season and falls off the face of the earth. Wide receiver 7 is Jacoby Lane of USC. Again, another USC Trojan here. Big wide receiver at 6'4", 195 pounds. Will be sharing the field with Makai Lemon here, but like I said, 2 of these guys actually transferred out. Zachariah Branch, who was the 5-star recruit, he goes to Georgia. Duce Robinson, also a highly recruited guy, goes to Florida State. Both of those guys are gone, so it's just Makai Lemon. It's just Jacoby Lane this year. He led USC with 12 touchdowns last year. No one else had more than 5. So that 6'4" frame was used in the red zone. He and Lemon should anchor the passing game. Maybe we get a pseudo like Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knowles situation where Jacoby Lane hypothetically would be Jaden Higgins in this situation. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Jacoby Lane, USC's quarterback's kind of in flux right now, but I do think they'll probably have better quarterback play than they had a year ago. So these two guys should be able to concentrate the offense, and I do think the run game should be pretty good in USC this year as well. So we'll have to wait and see how their offense looks, but I do think it could end up being pretty solid. Wide receiver 8 to 10. All of these guys are in the same area, and all of them are kind of like upside swings. I would say all 3 of these guys probably have higher ceilings than the 2 that I just talked about. Jaden Greathouse from Notre Dame, Kevin Concepcion, I don't know how to pronounce that. That looks French to me. I'm saying it in French, of Texas A&M, formerly of NC State. Nic Anderson, formerly of Oklahoma, now of LSU. And I would argue Nic Anderson probably has the highest ceiling of maybe every receiver in this class, but one guy who I'll talk about way later in this video. But Jaden Greathouse of Notre Dame, 6'1", 215, projected 4.50 speed. Really, really solid back half of college football last year. Of course, Notre Dame made the national championship. His only 2 100-yard games of the season were the college football semifinal and the national championship, where he had over 102 touchdowns in the national championship, 2.08 yards per out run, 75.7 PFF receiving grade, 592 and 4 touchdowns isn't anything special, but when you combine the fact that Greathouse was a 4-star college football recruit who was 18 and 19 last year and the year before that, and won't be 21 until the end of the college football season, I think this could be a really big year for him. And he's a really solid bet to be a top 2 NFL draft pick. He also went to a highly regarded high school where when we went to Austin, we were right down the street from it. And a lot of pro prospects have come out of that high school too. So I do think Jaden Greathouse has a really good chance to take a big step forward here, become a top 50, top 75 NFL draft pick. He's currently projected to be about a 3rd rounder, as are kind of all of these guys. Moving into Kevin Concepcion from Texas A&M, like I said, transfers in from NC State. He was a big Devy guy last year because he posted 105 targets, 72 catches, 845 and 10 as a true freshman at North Carolina State. Last year had a bad season, 460 and 6. Transfers to Texas A&M, presumably with a better quarterback. So we'll see what happens. He is a small slot receiver. And most of the guys that I'm actually talking about, it's a pretty big wide receiver class just in stature. But Kevin Concepcion, a little bit smaller, 5'11", 187 pounds, has 4.4 speed according to NFL Draft Buzz. Looking at a comp for him, you're looking at like a big school Andy Isabella type of player, maybe like a Marvin Mims, given that he had a great freshman season and could develop into like a bigger producer in his junior year, like we saw from Marvin Mims when he was coming out. Nic Anderson is a guy that I actually have bags of in Devy. I do have him in one league. Formerly of Oklahoma, 6'4", 210 pounds, redshirt junior coming into this year. His injury-riddled 2024 season can go right in the garbage. You might look at this list of comps that he has, like Xavier Legette, Terrace Marshall, and go, ew, that's a bunch of one-year wonders. Adonai Mitchell, also a guy that he comps to favorably. Well, Nic Anderson only has 1 year of production. In his freshman season, he was redshirted, didn't play at all. In his redshirt freshman season, he actually won Freshman of the Year in the Big 12, posting 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then last year, he could not get on the field. He was injured pretty much all season with lower body stuff. This was supposed to be the big breakout season in 2024, but he was hurt all season. So here's the great thing about Nic Anderson. His profile is still decent, despite really only having 1 year of production. And now he is transferring to LSU with one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Garrett Nussmeier could be the quarterback 1 in the 2026 NFL draft, and he could possibly explode at 21 years old with 6'4", 210 pound size with some production under his belt already. I would say of all the wide receivers in this top 5 to 10 in the class, he is the highest ceiling guy to rise into a really, really top tier prospect. Could end up being like a literal top 10 NFL draft pick with a good NFL season this year. His profile is a lot like what Brian Thomas Jr.'s was coming into his breakout season, a lot like what Malik Neighbors was coming into his breakout season. So if you slapped a 1,400-yard, 10-touchdown season on this dude, he would end up being an absolute stud and probably return a huge, huge amount on investment in a Devy draft, end up making this top 5, top 6 overall picks of a 2026 rookie draft a lot better as well. Wide receiver 11, closing out this bucket, is another guy who's been on the Devy scene for a while, and that's Evan Stewart from Oregon. Last year, he should have just been so much better. I think Evan Stewart, I was, a year early on this. I was not excited about him going into this year, even though I would say a lot of people had him as like a top 3 to 5 receiver in the 2025 wide receiver class. He was number 1 in the country in terms of the team that he was on, but he was not number 1 in the country in terms of really anything else. He was on Oregon with a 3rd-round quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. Tez Johnson, not really a huge, dominating presence. He was a 7th-round pick for a reason. And Stewart has been a Devy darling since his freshman season. He had a 99 target season at Texas A&M. Didn't really do anything after that. He hasn't done anything as a sophomore. Didn't do anything his junior season. He has flashes. Like, he looks like he's an explosive guy and can do a whole lot when he's got the ball in his hand. But other than like great speed, which is projected like 4.3, he kind of just reminds me of one of these like Isaiah Bond types where we get excited about the tools and he never really puts it all together. At 6 foot, 175 pounds, I think best case scenario, you're looking at like Josh Downs. And honestly, I don't even think he's that good, because when I watch Josh Downs, I see a guy who's like a true wide receiver, whereas Evan Stewart's more athlete, playing the wide receiver position when you actually watch the tape. So that closes out the wide receiver 3 upside territory. Again, I would say those top 11 are probably the dudes that make up the 1st and the 2nd round of rookie drafts next year, assuming we get most of them coming out for school. Moving into the flex plays, I'll do this in 2 groups, because there's some guys here that are seniors and 5th-year guys and 6th-year guys who will absolutely be in this class. And then there's some other guys who are underclassmen with a lot to prove, which may result in them going back to school if they don't have good seasons. So the 5 senior guys you could see here: Antonio Williams from Clemson, who somehow is being projected as a 1st-round pick. I don't really get it, to be honest. He's never crossed 1,000 yards, despite playing with Cade Klubnik, who's a really good quarterback in college football. Being a small slot receiver as well at a big school with a really good quarterback, you'd think he'd be more productive than he is. And let's say he has a great year this year. Okay, you got a guy who didn't break out till his 4th college football season when Cade had like a monster year, presumably, and that's how he would break out. And he's going to go in the 1st round. Like, I just don't buy that. I mean, undersized slot receivers do not go in the 1st round. Josh Downs, a much better prospect than both Evan Stewart and Antonio Williams, and he fell to the 3rd round. So I don't see Antonio Williams going this high, which is why I don't really read too much stock into the draft capital. And when you actually stack up the caliber of prospect he is minus draft capital, he is like a Ricky Pearsall, Malachi Corley, Alec Pierce type, which is more of like a day 2 projection. I get that Ricky Pearsall went in the 1st round, but he was a reach according to, the prospect model. And we'll have to kind of wait and see there. So Antonio Williams from Clemson, definitely an interesting prospect, but a little bit more of a shifty slot receiver who's probably going to go on day 2. Malachi Fields transferring from Virginia to Notre Dame. He's big too, 6'4", 220-pound size, low 4.5 speed, some production at Virginia, but nothing special. 800 yards, 5 touchdowns the last 2 years. Is he going to break out at Notre Dame when Jaden Greathouse, in my opinion, is just a better receiver than him? Probably not. I can't imagine they're going to be very pass heavy, so we'll see what happens with Malachi Fields. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, also an interesting name because he goes to Alabama. 6'1", 210 pounds, decent speed, projected at a 4.52. Profiles, I would say, is like a day 2-ish guy. Problem is that he's played for 3 schools already: Michigan State, Washington, and now Alabama, and has never really been dominant anywhere. He had 800 yards, 2 touchdowns last year. That's fine, I guess. Maybe without Jalen Milroe, they'll throw the ball more. But Jeremy Bernard, probably not a guy that I'm expecting too much out of. Maybe he'll break out. Maybe he won't. We'll have to wait and see. Aaron Anderson of LSU, another small slot receiver, 5'8", 187 pounds. Had a nice year last year with 874 and 5, but Nic Anderson comes in for LSU, and Barian Brown from Kentucky, who's been a productive veteran college football wide receiver. I could see Aaron Anderson probably getting kind of phased into the background, but nonetheless, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier has 3 really good wide receivers to throw to. Dane Key, formerly of Kentucky, now of Nebraska, big-bodied guy. Again, I mean, a lot of size in this class, 6'2", 6'3", 4.50 speed. Not expected to get drafted at the moment. He's not actually going in NFL mock drafts right now, according to NFL mock draft database, but he does stack up similar to like an early day 3 profile. We'll see what happens now at Nebraska since he transferred. The interesting guys from this territory are the 4 underclassmen: Zachariah Branch, Nyck Harbor, Eugene Wilson, and Duce Robinson. I would say definitely higher ceilings than the guys that I talked about already, but I will say there's a risk that all of these guys flop, or a risk that they don't even come out for this class and they go back to school for another year, especially given the NIL money that some of them are making, mainly Zachariah Branch of this group, and Nyck Harbor too, because of the 5-star pedigree that they had coming out of high school. Given the profiles, I would not be shocked if like one of these guys is actually in this class, because none of their profiles are good at the moment. But whoever has the best year, I could see coming out. Zach Branch, formerly of USC, now of Georgia, is explosive, electric in space, good kick returner, all that kind of stuff. He's kind of like a cheaper Evan Stewart. But he's 5'10", 175 pounds, which is small. We know that. Once he actually gets through the NFL draft process, I'm sure he's going to get nitpicked for his size. He was the number one recruit in the class coming out in 2023, but he's kind of been mid ever since then. 503 yards, 320 yards as a sophomore and as a freshman, respectively. Forces his way basically out of USC after getting outproduced by Makai Lemon and some of the other guys there. I don't expect him to all of a sudden be good on Georgia when he's clearly not that good. He obviously was a 5-star recruit and has talent, but let's see if UGA can actually unlock this guy as something other than USC's number 3 wide receiver, which is basically what he was the last 2 years. So he's interesting only because of the 5-star pedigree, but for the most part, I think he's kind of overrated. Nyck Harbor from South Carolina, here's somebody that I'm actually interested in because he also was a very high recruit in the 2023 class. I believe he was the number 15 prospect in the country, number 1 athlete in the country, because he's 6'5", 235. Production is definitely weighing him down at the moment with 376 yards and 6 touchdowns this year. But we reportedly could be talking about a DK Metcalf level freak in terms of athleticism. His listed 40, I'm not even joking, is 4.24 at 6'5", 235. So we're talking about a literal freak show athletically. Number 1 recruit in the country at the athlete position because people probably had no idea what to do with him. Is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? Are they going to play him as a pass rusher? Like, nobody would know really what to do with this guy, but he ran a 10-1 in the 100-meter time in high school, which roughly translates to a 4.27 40-yard dash time. If this dude can put it together, man, and Lenora Sellers is throwing him the football. Lenora Sellers, when I talk about the quarterbacks, is one of the best quarterbacks in the 2026 class. He could have a first-round ascension similar to a Brian Thomas Jr. or some other like very, very good athlete, type of guy that could, turn the corner. DK Metcalf also had that back in 2019. His profile through 2 years looks a lot like Brian Thomas Jr. And to give you guys an idea of how young and, malleable of a prospect this guy is, like, he's not even 20 years old yet. He was born in 2005. Like, doesn't that make you feel old? This guy's coming out for the draft this year. He was born 2005. Like, man, this dude's super, super young, very, very athletic, and, could be an absolute dude this year. If Lenora Sellers takes a big step for South Carolina and they're a good team, Nyck Harbor's probably going to end up going in the first round as a result of it. So keep that in mind. Maybe he goes back for another year of school because he's so young. But if he has a great year this year, again, I'm playing the 1,300-yard 8 test. If you slap a 1,300-yard 8-touchdown season on a lot of these prospects, who goes the highest in the NFL draft? And I could argue that Nyck Harbor would go in the top 10 of the NFL draft if that were to happen in terms of production. Eugene Wilson from Florida had a great freshman year as well, 81.5 PFF grade, 544 and 6 touchdowns as a true freshman, 2.17 career yards per out run, and he was over 2.7 this year in the 4 games that he played. 5'10", 183 pounds, 4.43 40 time. So, I mean, it's helmet scouting, but he does kind of have like a little bit of a Ricky Pearsall type of look to him. DJ Lagway, the quarterback of Florida, is the new hotshot quarterback that everybody's obsessed with. If he ends up being really good, it's possible that Eugene Wilson could be a monster if Lagway is the truth. So those of you guys who are Devy fans, I'm sure know who DJ Lagway is, but Eugene Wilson, his number 1 receiver, could definitely end up being a guy in the 2026 class. Duce Robinson of Florida State, formerly of USC, the 4th USC Trojan that I'm talking about here. Such a crowded room last year, the 4th one on this list. Robinson ranked just behind Lemon with the 2nd highest yards per out run and the 2nd highest PFF receiving grade of the 4 group that they had there. And he actually led the team in yards per reception. He is very raw. I would be shocked if he's in this class because he's 6'6", 220 pounds, has speed, but is very, very raw. I would expect him to probably play 2 years at Florida State, not have a great year this year, and come out in 2026. I think he'll probably be in the 2027 class, but I'm just mentioning him here. Again, played the 1,300-yard and 8-touchdown test. If he has a season like that, he could definitely come out for the NFL draft. And this is the rest of the class. I'm not going to go super in-depth on Brandon Inniss and Berrien Brown and some of these other guys. I'll just give you a quick overview. Brandon Inniss is also an Ohio State Buckeye. He may fill into Emeka Egbuka's role, which is, he played in the slot. Emeka Egbuka, of course, was the slot receiver, and Inniss was a high recruit at one point, so maybe he'll fill into that production, and Carnell Tate will stay in his own role. We'll have to wait and see there. Berrien Brown was productive at the University of Kentucky. He transfers into LSU. He's a little bit of an older prospect, but he's been solid. Deion Burks, interesting tools. Isaiah Horton transfers to Bama, 6'4", another big receiver in this class, semi-productive last year at Miami. And then Stribling, DeAndre Moore, Eric Rivers, kind of uninteresting at the moment. I would say in totality, this class has a lot of potential. It does not have a lot of proven talent right now. Other than like Jordyn Tyson, a couple other guys, there is not a lot of guys that I feel comfortable would be first-round NFL draft picks in a vacuum right now. But this class has size. It has athleticism. 12 of the top 20 in my model are 6'1" or taller. And when you get guys that actually have size like that and are, projected to get decent draft capital as a result, with 5 of them being 6'3" or taller in my top 10, you definitely have a chance for a class to be pretty solid. Best comparable class we've seen. Again, keep in mind that I am projecting a little bit forward with some of the grades that these guys ended up getting. But in terms of makeup, this class looks very, very similar to 2018. So you see DJ Moore was the only wide receiver 1 upside. He'd be kind of the Jordyn Tyson of that class. Sutton, Miller, James Washington, Kirk. That's the, Denzel Boston and all those guys that I talked about, Eric Singleton and those type of dudes. And then a bunch of wide receiver 3 upside prospects, a couple of flex play prospects as well. Again, modestly projecting, it looks a lot like the 2018 wide receiver class. And if you guys want to see what the class looks like without draft capital, because again, if we assume that we're not going to get the draft capital correct on these guys because there's a whole nother college football season to be played, they rank this way just based purely off of traits and their analytics. You can see Elijah Sarratt ranks as the number 1 guy. Makai Lemon ranks up very, very highly as well. Dane Key gets an upgrade. Eugene Wilson gets an upgrade. Jeremy Bernard gets an upgrade. Brandon Inniss gets an upgrade. All these guys move up some spots, whereas Jordyn Tyson moves down. Eric Singleton moves down. Carnell Tate moves down. Jacoby Lane, Nic Anderson, and Evan Stewart all move down in some spots. And it kind of makes sense. A lot of the guys that move down are probably film guys. A lot of the guys that move up are probably analytics guys or traits guys. So that is the 2026 wide receivers to target and avoid. Again, go take a shower right now after watching this video because we're getting way too sweaty for your league mates right now. If I helped you get ahead of your league mates, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Check out the running back video. I'm going to group quarterbacks and tight ends together because A, I don't have a quarterback prospect model, which I'm going to be building in the next couple of months. And B, tight end and quarterback are a little bit easier to explain. We just look for draft capital. I might watch some film on some of the quarterbacks before I get into it and stack up some of their numbers. So be on the lookout for that video. It'll probably take me about a week to get everything in order for it. But once we have all of those, quarterback, tight end, running back, and wide receiver, I'll probably rip a tier list as well in terms of what I expect out of this 2026 class, where you can expect the early first round guys to be, where you can expect the mid first round guys to be, late first round, how valuable are the second round picks, all that kind of stuff. One thing to keep in mind, if you think, hey, 2026 is not where it's at, I want 2027 picks, I promise you every year when we say the class isn't good, which people have said about the 2026 class, including myself, every year there's guys that emerge. Every year, doesn't matter how good or bad the prospects are, you're still going to see early ones go for a lot on the open market, mid first go for a lot on the open market, late first go for a lot on the open market, and so on and so forth. If I had to say, gun to my head, what's a good piece of advice to take on right now, see if you can get people selling their first rounders for cheap, because I do think that some people are of the opinion that this class sucks and the first rounders won't be good. But I do kind of like the quarterback position. I do kind of like the running back position. And there's guys in the wide receiver class that can emerge. Tight ends, not really sure exactly how that's going to materialize, but I wouldn't expect this class to be terrible. I wouldn't expect this class maybe to be as good as 2024's or some of the other really good classes that we've seen, but it's got some guys at the top. So definitely, if you guys are interested in all that stuff, check it out down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the site. flockfantasy.com has all my dynasty rankings, including 2026 rookie picks in the overall startup rankings, rookie rankings for 2025, best ball rankings for those of you guys that are doing best ball drafts right now. All that will be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.